I declare the council meeting open at 6 p.m. Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting today is being held on Wajak Noongar Budja, and I would like to acknowledge and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. I thank all past and present members of the community that have supported the city to better understand and value Noongar culture within the city of Wanneroo. I now invite you to bow your head in prayer. Lord, we thank you for blessing our city, our community and our council. Guide us all in our decision-making to act fairly, without fear or favour, and with compassion, integrity, wisdom and honesty. May we show true leadership, be inclusive of all, and guide all of the city's people and many families to a prosperous future that all may share. We ask this in your name. Amen. Please note that the audio-visual proceedings of tonight's meetings will be live broadcast online with the exception of matters to be discussed behind closed doors. The broadcast of the proceedings of the meeting can be accessed live and on demand through the City of Wanneroo YouTube channel. Tonight we have a request for electronic attendance from Councillor Huntley, and I'll ask my fellow council members to vote on accepting Councillor Huntley into the meeting electronically. I'll now ask you to cast your vote. How many have we got here? And that's passed unanimously. I will now ask Councillor Support to admit Councillor Huntley from the Zoom waiting room, please. Let the record show that Councillor Huntley has been authorised by Council to attend this ordinary council meeting by electronic means in accordance with the details as signed in the request documentation submitted on the request form dated the 6th of August 2024. Councillor Huntley, will you now please make your declaration prior to participating in the confidential part of this meeting?
Thank you, Mayor. I hope you can hear me.
200 homes, if it was allowed to keep it still.
With regard to item... Oh. In accordance with section 14 CA5, I, Jacqueline Huntley, declare that I can maintain confidentiality while attending this council meeting electronically.
Tonight we have a request for electronic... Councillor Huntley, we have to have the camera on before we can formally accept you.
Sorry, Mayor, I was just wondering where that camera was.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Huntley. We also have a request for electronic attendance from Councillor Seif. I will ask my fellow council members to vote on accepting Councillor Seif into the meeting electronically, and I will now ask you to cast your vote for Councillor Seif's request. Alex, would you like to cast your vote for Councillor Seif's admittance? And that was passed. That was passed unanimously. So, Councillor Support, could you please admit Councillor Seif from the Zoom waiting room? Hello, Councillor Seif. Let the record show that Councillor Seif has been authorised by Council to attend this ordinary council meeting by electronic means in accordance with the details as signed in the request documentation submitted with the request form dated the 2nd of September 2024. Councillor Seif, will you now make your declaration prior to participating in the confidential part of this meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hereby declare, according to the Act, that I can attend this ordinary council meeting with full confidentiality.
Thank you. Item 2, apologies and leave of absence. We have a leave of absence from Councillor Berry, which is until the 7th of October 2024, and we have an apology from Councillor Parker. We have new requests for a leave of absence. Councillor Coetzee has requested a leave of absence from the 2nd to the 15th of October 2024 inclusive. Councillors, could you please cast your vote to support this? I shouldn't say that. Anyway. And that is passed unanimously. We now go to a request for a leave of absence from Councillor C from the 11th of September 2024 to the 12th of November 2024 inclusive. If councillors could vote their support on this too, thank you. And that is passed unanimously as well. We now go to public question time. The following general rules apply to public question and statement time. Public questions and statements should only relate to the business of the local government and should not be a personal statement or opinion. Only questions relating to matters affecting the local government will be considered at a council meeting, and only questions that relate to the purpose of the meeting will be considered at a special council meeting. Questions may be taken on notice and responded to after the meeting. Questions may not be directed at specific council members or a city employee. Questions are not to be framed in such a way as to reflect adversely on a particular council member or a city employee. First priority will be given to persons who are asking questions relating to items on the current council meeting agenda, and second priority will be given to public statements. Only public statements regarding items on the council agenda under consideration will be heard. Each person seeking to ask questions or make a statement may address the council for a maximum of 3 minutes each. Is Mrs. Caratazzolo here this evening? No, she's not. I have a statement here from Rocco Caratazzolo in response to petition PT 010724. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. In reference to the risk appetite statement stating that the City of Wanneroo administration is willing to accept a medium to high risk in the areas of the community with more pain and suffering to the community, is a neglect of responsibility and duty of care. The suggestion of season weed control shows no commitment to put a stop to the weeds and deal with the dangers to the mobile scooters and general public. There is neglect when not willing to reflect on its previous decisions, also ignoring the less than 100 metre rule with enough funds that was not considered even when it was pointed out. The statements on the city website, Your Wanneroo, in big letters, and the other that I stated in the email to Ian Barker stating, this framework provides a mechanism for the city to practice good governance and ensure that the city is able to manage its many complex legislative and governance responsibilities effectively and in the best interest of the community. As I mentioned on the 3rd of September, this problem has been going on for years, and now that the soil is lower than the footpath, it places a danger to the mobile scooters and general public. After the 3rd of September, I spoke briefly with Harminder Singh, as in the question time he acknowledged that we are requesting an addition of extension only on the fence side, which is correct. This can be done easily as the area is 52.5 metres on by 400 millimetres wide, being 21 square metres, that is 2.1 cubic metres of concrete at the cost of $657. The 2.5 metre wide footpath that costs $20,000 that is being used as a conflict of interest has no bearing on this issue. Just like the future projects of the community centre, that is years away and the government has yet to agree to fund the projects. Regardless whether they do fund it or not, the problem with the weeds is here and now and must be addressed to put a stop to the weeds and make it a safe path for mobile scooters and public. We hope that a common sense will prevail and the City of Wanneroo stand by the statements in the best interest of the community. I read each one of your statements as members of this council. As I mentioned on the 3rd of September, it is hard to digest and justify how this has been made so hard, considering the less than 100 metre rule. For a council that supports sporting clubs, I must ask if there is some animosity towards the Catholic Church. I must also add that most of our maintenance volunteers also volunteer to assist with struggling families in Girraween. Protecting and hiding one's iniquities is self-defeating, and in a position of trust it compounds and causes much more damage. This is our last part of the garden we would like to attend to and make it presentable. Be fully conscious of the choice you'll make. Warm regards, Rocco Caratazzolo. I've also got some answers to some questions from Councillor Daniel Kingston, who lives in Edgewater, regarding PQ 01824. Item 7 petitions, PT 01824, District Planning Scheme Amendment number 215, Woodvale. With respect to the advertising of the Metropolitan Scheme Amendment relating to Woodvale Drive, what advertising occurred at the local government level and what advertising occurred at the state government level? The response by our Director of Planning and Sustainability states, in terms of the Metropolitan Scheme Amendment for the land that was discussed at the council meeting 2 meetings ago, there was no public advertising undertaken by the City of Wanneroo with regard to the Metropolitan Scheme Amendment. The City did not provide its comments back to the Western Australian Planning Commission. And MRS Amendment number 1419 was initiated by the WA Planning Commission, and advertising was undertaken on the WA Planning Commission's behalf by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. The proposed amendment was advertised by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage and was referred to the City and various state government agencies as part of this process. Details of the extent of advertising undertaken by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage may be sought directly from the DPLH on telephone number 65519000 or via email at regionalplanningschemes@dplh.wa.gov.au. The City is not required to undertake consultation on an MRS amendment. At the last council meeting, there was a discussion on the ability of the WAPC to concurrently amend the district planning scheme if there is an amendment of the Metropolitan Regional Scheme. From looking at the Planning and Development Act, that firstly requires a formal consultation with the local government. Has a consultation occurred? The response by the Director of Planning Sustainability says, the City did not receive some notification of the early engagement with the proponent in terms of formal engagement, and the question at that time was taken on notice, and there is a further response to this question. Pursuant to section 126 in brackets 3 of the Planning and Development Act 2005, where land is being transferred to the urban zone under the MRS, the WAPC can resolve to concurrently amend the respective local planning scheme to transfer this land to a zone or reservation which is consistent with the objective of the urban zone. As noted in the previous response, proposed amendment number 1419 was referred to the City by the WAPC as part of its consultation process. In accordance with standard practice, the WAPC will make a decision on the MRS amendment and on a concurrent amendment of the City of Wanneroo District Planning Scheme number 2 in brackets DPS 2 at the close of the public submission period. In this case, the proponent chose to submit a separate proposal seeking an amendment to DPS 2. This DPS 2 amendment was considered at the council meeting held on the 16th of July and was not supported by the council. A further question further on that point. As I said, if there is a concurrent amendment by the WAPC, that consultation must occur first with the local government. I have looked at the powers that are delegated to the CEO. In the Planning Development Act, it refers to local government unless the power is delegated by council to the CEO. That would then have to require a decision of council. So has the City of Wanneroo Council delegated the power to respond to that consultation to the CEO and to the Director indirectly? The response from the Director of Planning and Sustainability states that the question was taken on notice, and this is now the response to that question. The Local Government Act 1995 provides a clear distinction between the representative and policy-making role of the elected councillors and the administrative and advisory role of administration. In this instant, the proposed MRS amendment was consistent with the City's draft local planning strategy that had been approved by the Council and the Commission for advertising purposes. Therefore, as there was nothing in the proposed MRS amendment that required consideration by the Council, the administration prepared and submitted the response on behalf of the City. No delegated authority has been provided by Council. However, it is administration's view that no delegation is required as per the Local Government Act. I have a question from Ms Ros Casey in Merriwa. Why is the city about PQ02 824? Why is the city pursuing a sports-centric approach to its public open space planning that is inconsistent with state policies and guidelines and is detrimental to community harmony and environment? As a high-level response, my observation is that the city's local planning policy provides for a balanced need of different types of recreation, sporting and conservation usage within our public open space. That is the intent of the policy, to reflect the community's need. I would also contend that there is a significant demand for the use of our sporting facilities that the city provides, and indeed the policy also reflects the needs of the local community. Further response to this is the city's approach to public open space planning as set out in Local Planning Policy 4.3. Public open space seeks to achieve a balanced approach to public open space provision that supports positive sporting, recreation and conservation outcomes for its growing communities. This is consistent with the state government's Livable Neighbourhoods Design Code, which includes a design principle to coordinate the design and delivery of an integrated network of public open space that provides communities with access to nature, sport and recreation. LPP 4.3 is holistic in its approach to public open space planning and includes a range of provisions that aim to maximise access to public open space, retain and protect areas of environmental significance to meet the city's biodiversity targets, and provide suitably sized and located spaces for both organised sport and unstructured recreation activities. Although the intent of Livable Neighbourhoods is to establish a standard approach for open space planning, it does provide scope for local governments to respond to local circumstances and requirements. While it is acknowledged that it expresses a preference for formal sporting uses to be accommodated within district public open space of between 5 to 15 plus hectares, in reality, the City of Wanneroo has a very limited number of public open space areas that actually meet this criteria, meaning that the city has to maximise the flexibility of neighbourhood spaces that it has available. While LPP 4.3 is focused on public open space in emerging suburbs, the city's Active Reserves Master Plan, prepared in 2016, was focused on improving flexibility of use of what are predominantly neighbourhood spaces in established suburbs. I have a question or statement from Ms Kay Detert from Two Rocks about PQ010924. I refer to the Two Rocks proposed Southern Beach Access and Car Park project City of Wanneroo resolved to construct at its ordinary meeting of the 30th of July 2019 and ask when was the scanning of the above mentioned area undertaken and what date was the City of Wanneroo advised of the results and discovery of unexploded ordnances. Yep. Are you? Would you like to come and ask the questions yourself? Sorry, so many people weren't in there. And so this is... Ms Detert, can you tell us your name and the suburb you live in? Thank you.
My name is Kerry Detert and I live in Two Rocks.
Go ahead.
Yep. Okay. In response to these questions, I'm not sure which beach access they're talking about here, saying that it's scheduled for 2026. As Mayor Aitken and Councillor Figg will be aware that from the residents' meetings that I did push some years ago, back in 2019, this is how this beach access come about by helping Acumen to get a petition. Nick came here, put a deputation forward, and it was all go. So I don't quite understand why we're waiting. What's this going to be? 26, 8 years for a southern beach access, when the reason it got moved was because of the safety issue for that seaweed being this high, and that's the dog beach. That's the reason it got moved in the first place, because of safety issue and civil liability, that you cannot force somebody to use something which is an obvious hazard. So that has sat there for quite some time. I am aware that through talking with somebody connected to DFIS, going back in about 2020, that there was talks with the City of Wanneroo to have that southern beach access down near Blacksland, Whitfield, scanned. Alex actually, or Councillor Figg, actually confirmed at one of the meetings that, or actually, and on a community page, that it has been scanned. So I'm not sure what this is about, where this is saying that the scanning is forecast to take place in another nearly 18 months, 16 months' time.
Okay, I'll just, Mr Dixon, are you able to respond? Oh, Mr Singh, could you respond to that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There are a few comments in that particular question. The project has been ongoing since 2019, that's true. It has been designed and some of the approvals were obtained, but we had to change some of the footprint for that particular accessway and the car park. So we have to apply for a revised clearing permit. And regarding the UXO, and sorry, before I get to UXO, regarding the funding available, the cost of that project has increased substantially with the needs to meet the construction cost and also the cost involved with meeting the environmental offset conditions, which are quite substantial. Therefore, as part of the budget processes, it was listed in the long-term financial plan to be done in 26-27. So that's the reason it's going in that financial year. As prior to undertaking construction, we will undertake a UXO survey to reconfirm if the site is safe to go ahead.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I do. So are you saying that no scan was ever actually undertaken? I'm quite well aware that back in 2019 that I think it was somewhere around 200 and then it was 500,000. It got moved from the southern end where it was originally proposed for the reef because of the bus station, and then it went further north. 3 options were put there and one of them was chosen. So given the cost of construction now, as opposed to we were going to have quite a few developers who were putting in money for that and going halves with the City of Wanneroo for the construction of the area, then I don't understand why the cost is such a big issue. But just moving on.
Thank you, Mrs. Duterte. I'll just get Mr Singh to respond to that. And if you could just speak through the chair and then I will direct your questions, okay? Mr Singh, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll reconfirm whether UXO was done previously or not. But regarding the cost contribution, there was one developer who offered to contribute, I think, in the order of $200,000 toward the project. But the cost is quite substantial. I think it's in excess of $3.5–4 million. It's just not the cost of construction, it's the cost of meeting the environmental offset conditions, which do require city to maintain the offset sites for a number of years.
Ms Duterte, do you have another question?
Yeah, just in regard to the costs then, don't we have a fund where out of the, that community fund? No money has gone into Two Rocks for very little from the City of Wanneroo. Everything is from the developers. So surely that I know going back a few years ago, it was about $3,000 from each block of land goes into that community development. So why can't we get a southern beach access where it's a safe beach access? It's been approved by the Royal Life Saving Society. And then we don't have the problem where from the marina down to that first rock and around the corner during summer, that is full of seaweed.
Thank you, Ms Duterte. You've had your time, but I'll get Mr Dixon to respond to the purpose of the developer contribution funds and what that is put aside for so that you would understand that that there is a plan and a pre-purposed plan. Mr Dixon, could you please explain that to Mr Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So for each lot that is constructed within the Anchet Toolbox area, there is a developer contribution fund where funds are collected for the purpose of building community infrastructure, and that's already identified. In that current plan, there was three elements of community facilities that are being provided. One is the Surf Lifesaving Club, the other is Splendid Park, and the third is going to be a beach access just to the north of Yanchep. There will be further developer contribution funds into the future as development occurs over the next 40 years in and around that area. So funding may be made available as part of those future DCPs. But at the moment, that's all the money's being collected for, is those three community projects that I've just mentioned.
Sorry, can I?
And you've had your 3 minutes now,
Okay.
so that's...
All right, so there is no Southern Beach access at all now?
That is not correct, but you've had your 3 minutes, and
Okay.
I'm sure if you want to speak with Mr Dixon or Mr Singh afterwards, they will be able to answer your further questions. Do we have Mr Harrison here from Marigini? Would you like to come and ask your questions, Mr Harrison, sorry.
Good evening, Honourable Mayor and Councillors. Greg Harrison, Marigini. I've been before you on a similar topic about the safety and delays in East Wanneroo development. My main concern is the alteration to District 7, now 15, done originally by the Burgess Group. If the current changes are uptaken, the safety of school children and motorists are at high risk. It beggars belief that the traffic flow around a school area is not held in high regard. Capelin Street will be a high truck and vehicle traffic area with 4 lanes. Trucks, as you know, cannot stop as fast as cars. School buses and parents dropping off students need the utmost priority in town planning. The Burgess Group has a doable school location off Capelin Street, using Honey Road as the main exit and entrance, with a ring road around the school. This is not the case in the altered plan. Secondly, the proposed moving of the school due west destroys the alignment of the wildlife bush corridor from the Garden Park Bushland Reserve through to Little Marigini Bushland Reserve. It is easy to see from the satellite imagery. Thirdly, the shifting of the school destroys many of the red and white-tailed Carnaby's cockatoo tree habitat. This would have been retained in the public open space. All of these points noted are of major alterations to the chosen district structure plan presented by the council. These alterations seem to be done in haste with mounting political pressure. This has been caused by developers wanting to start their own land assets, much of which is outside of any structure plan, located south of Capelin Street. As I mentioned when last before the council, several months ago, that the sewage pumping station is the major hold-up. The land and the pumping station need to be chosen and paid for as a priority. The land around it cannot support urbanisation, making it unwelcome for many landowners. If the council was to fix the infrastructure problem by installing the pump, then the south side of Capelin Street could go ahead tomorrow. This would alleviate some political pressure from the planning department, giving them time to allow for more district submissions from other developers and town planners. To conclude, all 3 points are in stark contrast to the goals of the city and the West Australian Planning Department for the East Wanneroo. Thank you for your time and consideration. Honourable Mayor and Councillors.
Thank you, Mr Harrison. Mr Dixon, would you like to respond to that, please?
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mayor. So, Mr Harrison, I think in the questions that we received in writing from you, you're referring to consideration of precinct 15. That's been considered by council this evening. I think a lot of the comments that you were making in relation to the school relate to precinct 7, which is due to come to council, hopefully, is scheduled to come to council for the next month's council meeting. And that's when council will consider the location of the school and consideration of Cape Horn Street, pump station issues and the like that you've raised in your questions this evening. I'm happy to spend some time with you going through the detail of some of those issues, if that's something that you would find valuable. But I think the questions that you're asking in relation to precinct 7, which has not yet been considered by council.
It's just confusing because it says Marigini, which is my area.
I appreciate the confusion because there are 28 precincts in the East Wanneroo area. Precinct 15 is further to the north and east than precinct 7. And that's the one that council are considering this evening. Precinct 7 is just to the north of Cape Horn Street, which I think you're referring to in your questions. But as I mentioned, I'm happy to spend time with you just explaining where council administration is at in terms of its assessment of that structure plan.
They all need the pump to put the poo somewhere. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Would you be able to advise Mr Harrison a week before briefing when precinct 7 comes to council to give him the opportunity to examine the report and make comment if he wants to do a deputation?
Certainly, Mayor. I'm happy to meet with Mr Harrison and just spend some time just explaining where we're at with the assessment.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Have we got Ms Wheatcroft here from Quinns Rocks? No, we haven't. So we've got a question about the glamping facility at Quinns Rocks. And it says, once construction commences for the glamping facility, the overflow car parking area will not be available. This is about PQ 03924, by the way, councillors. Is construction going to commence during the 2024 Surf Club season starting in October 24 and finishing in April 25? If so, what alternative parking arrangements for the current users of the overflow parking area have been made? The response from our Director of Corporate Strategy and Performance. This question and the following question appear to be in reference to the determination of a development application by the Western Australian Planning Commission on the 4th of September 2024 in relation to the Lot 211 Quinns Road Mindari site considered at the Ordinary Council meeting on the 12th of December 2023, item number CS06 1223. The handover preconditions for the site were addressed on page 20 of the administration report included in the minutes for the Ordinary Council meeting on the 12th of December 2023. This was formalised in the agreement for the lease executed by the City and the lessee in late February 2024, following the Ordinary Council meeting on the 20th of February 2024. The timing for access and the extent of initial access are still being finalised between the City and the lessee in accordance with the handover conditions in the agreement for lease. Question 2 is, will Council ensure that all construction activities related to the Dunes Beach Resort remain within the proposed development site and not encroach into the areas outside the boundary? And our response by the Director of Corporate Strategy and Performance. The access area in the agreement for lease was addressed on page 19 of the administration report included in the minutes for the Ordinary Council meeting on the 12th of December 2023, which confirmed that there was no right, either now or in the future, to develop adjacent land, nor any right to use or develop the adjacent bushland or beach areas. This position was formalised in the agreement for lease executed by the City and the lessee in late February 2024. Is Mr Giles from Alkimos here this evening? No. This is about developments of parks in Alkimos, about PQ 04924. Good evening. I'm writing as a concerned resident of the Alkimos community. The area of concern is the vacant land bordered by Leeward Avenue, Shorehaven Boulevard, Sounding Avenue, Iris Street and Ginger Way in Shorehaven, Alkimos. The area was sold by Pete as a premium estate at premium land values. The area noted above had a sign on the corner of Leeward Avenue and Shorehaven Boulevard in 2021 showing a graphic of a park and stating that it would be 1 hectare parkland. The people that purchased land along there were led to believe that this would be a pleasant, landscaped area. The sign has since been removed and the peat salespeople have a long list of excuses as to why it hasn't come to fruition. One excuse being sanddrift, which is no longer an excuse as all the land around there has been built on. We are not asking for a fully landscaped park with play equipment, barbecues, etc. The residents of this area deserve better than a huge sand pit littered with rubbish, car parts, etc. and is an eyesore. A park with grassed area, bordered garden beds and a cycle pedestrian footpath would be a huge improvement. Stockland Eglinton have done a much better job of providing beautifully landscaped parks throughout their estate. We are paying much higher rates than other councils in Perth metropolitan area and deserve better than this. I have a question there, but I will leave that. Out of the city budget, this would be a small outlay to provide what the community deserve. Pete, as the estate developers, should be covering the cost of this project, but if they won't, then the council should develop this site. I believe as the developers, Pete should be given a mandated period to carry out the work with a fixed end date. Unless this is done, my feeling is that Pete will walk away once all the land is sold, leaving council with the mess to clean up. Alkimos Shorehaven is a thriving young community that deserves nice recreational areas, and I hope you can prioritise developing the area in question. Thank you for taking this question. I look forward to a positive outcome. And the response by the Director of Planning and Sustainability. The delivery of parks, public open spaces 18 and 19, is forecast to commence in late 2024, subject to landscape and irrigation approval by the City. Negotiations and discussions on the detailed design for the parks are currently underway with Pete and their consultant landscape architect. Once approved, Pete will need to award the contract to a preferred landscape contractor. The parks will include grassed areas, garden beds with water-wise local native plants, footpaths, bench seating, various playground items, a drink fountain and a picnic set with shade structure. So it is coming. And I've got another question here from Mr Harrison at Mariginia about precinct 15, but I think you brought that just then. You're fine, aren't you? So I've got Heidi Savicini Whitfield, who's here to ask a question or make a statement. Could you please tell us your name and the suburb you live in? Thank you. And what item on the agenda you're speaking to? Thank you.
The city of Wanneroo, and he passed away in December last year, and I'm taken over his estate and trying to understand more about his land holdings in the city of Wanneroo.
Thank you. Is his estate sitting in precinct 15 or precinct 7 that we're discussing at the moment? Do you know?
It's precinct 15 and 16 and 9, and I think it goes across a few precincts.
Thank you. I might suggest that you speak with Mr Dixon, get in contact with Mr Dixon, and he will be able to make clear what's happening at the moment and the future development that will help you with dealing with your father's estate. I'm sorry for your loss, and thank you for coming to speak to council this evening.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. So are there any further public questions from attendees in the gallery tonight? If there are no more, we go to item 4, confirmation of minutes. Can I have a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of OCO 1924, the ordinary council meeting held on the 13th of August? Sorry? Oh, held on. So moved by Deputy Mayor Rowe and seconded by Councillor Right. Councillors, please cast your vote for the minutes of the ordinary council meeting. And that is passed unanimously. We now go to item SOC 01-924, minutes of the special council meeting held on the 27th of August 2024. Do I have a mover and seconder for the special council meeting minutes? Moved Councillor Herridge, seconded Councillor Bedworth. Councillors, please cast your vote, please. And that is passed unanimously. Announcements by the Mayor without discussion. So we have a Project Management Achievement Award win. I'm pleased to share that the City of Wanneroo was recently awarded a Project Management Achievement Award by the Australian Institute of Project Management for our Mindari Breakwater Upgrade project. The City has managed a breakwater structure since 2005, and in recent years there have been a number of issues with this structure. These complex breakwater upgrade works were undertaken by the City's contractor, WA Limestone, over a 12-month period and were completed in February 2024, with the project managed by our City's team. This project has delivered the desired outcome, as since completion of the construction works, a number of extreme winter storms have impacted the upgraded breakwater structure with no rock movement, significantly reduced wave overtopping and no public safety concerns. This fantastic outcome could not have been achieved without collaboration with the state government, who provided technical assistance throughout the design phase, and the Commonwealth Government, who provided financial assistance with a contribution of $3.383 million through the Coastal and Estuarine Risk Mitigation Program. Congratulations to the project team of Brian G. and Rory Elliard and Sarah McCulloch. Just like to congratulate, and I now invite Director of Assets, Mr. Harminder Singh, to come forward and receive the winner's certificate. It's always wonderful to share good news. Item 6, questions from council members. Do I have any questions from council members? Yes, Deputy Mayor Rowe.
Thanks, Mayor. It just follows on from reading aloud the public statement from Mr Caratazzolo in regard to the footpath on Patrick Court. I just thought it might be opportune to, through you, Mayor, to give Mr Singh the opportunity to respond, because I understand that he had some contact with the petitioner throughout the week. So perhaps if he could update the council as to what those discussions involved and what the outcome was.
Mr Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The petitioner rang me last week after the council meeting on Wednesday, and I pointed him toward the actual council report, which he had the opportunity to read afterwards. And I explained the recommendations made in the report, which were that after council makes a decision, hopefully tonight, and if the recommendation is accepted, we will meet with the petitioner and determine the seasonal weed control arrangements with them directly on site. And I was advised that petitioner is travelling at the moment and he'll be back in Perth on 23rd or 24th, so we'll meet with him after that.
Thank you, Mr Singh. We have no new petitions received, and there are update on petitions in the agenda. Item 8, we go to council reports. Any declarations of interest by council members, including the nature and extent of which the interest are to be made at the commencement of the item to which the interest relates. Declarations of interest forms are to be completed and handed to the Chief Executive Officer. And we go to Planning and Sustainability, Approval Services, PSO 10924, consideration of amendment to 211 to District Planning Scheme Number 2 following advertising, part normalisation of the East Wanneroo Cell 5 Lansdale Structure Plan Number 7 area. Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved Councillor Herridge, seconded Councillor Smith. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this item?
Just to put the recommendation forward as per Councillor's report. Thank you.
Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to this item? Councillors, please cast your vote. Passed unanimously. We now go to PSO 20924, consideration of amendment number 20112 to District Planning Scheme number 2 following advertising, part normalisation of the Butler Ridgewood Agreed Local Structure Plan number 27 and revocation of Brighton Village Agreed Local Structure Plan number 38. Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved Councillor Smith, seconder Councillor Bedworth. Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to this item? Councillor Bedworth, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that is passed unanimously. We now go to item PSO 30924, preparation of amendment number 224 to District Planning Scheme number 2, normalisation of land in the lots 1 and 102 Yanship Beach Road, Yanship Jindawi Rest, agreed local structure plan number 40 and lots 1 and 2 Yanship Beach Road, Yanship Jindawi East agreed local structure plan number 76. Do I have a mover and seconder for this, please? Moved Councillor Figg, seconded Councillor Coetzee. Councillor Figg, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Coetzee, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you.
Are there any speakers against? If there are no speakers against, please cast your vote, councillors. Councillor Seif? And that is passed unanimously. We now go to PS 04924, consideration of Precinct 15 Central Marigini Local Structure Plan following advertising. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Miles to move it, a seconder? Councillor Wright. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Only briefly to say that as a referring...
Just a minute, Councillor Miles. I'm sorry, Councillor Huntley has a declaration. We'll let her do a declaration and then get you to speak. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regards to this item, I disclose that I am a member of Precinct 6, that is where my home is, and as such, as a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Councillor Miles, go ahead. Please speak to this item.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, the report is quite well structured by administration. There are a number of items that the City is requesting the State Planning Commission possibly amend or change. Just a reminder, I think, to our residents and ratepayers that structure plans are actually approved by the West Australian Planning Commission. We are only a referral agent, so we can only make suggestions and recommendations, and they are all in this report, I think some 80 of them. We get it up to the WAPC for them to hopefully adopt some of those changes and move this on where it should have done some time ago. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I won't reiterate the comments that Councillor Miles has spoken about, but just to highlight one of the additional recommendations that the city is putting in its recommendation around the re-advertisement of that structure plan as specified by the Commission, and to reconsult with those relevant agencies. I'm not sure if that does extend back to community, but to be able to have that additional time to be able to consider those changes and any modifications to that plan, I think is a good thing to make sure we get that precinct right, because I know that this whole process, as large as it is and as fast as the state government wants us to deliver it, in terms of the approval process from the city's end, I think there are still a lot of challenges to work through, and in consideration with the district developer contribution plan as well. So I know definitely all of council is definitely working very diligently on these sorts of things. So apart from that, I commend the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that is passed unanimously. We now go to assets, ASO 1924, Road Safety Management Plan. Do I have a mover and seconder for the Road Safety Management Plan? Councillor Herridge, who would like to second this? Deputy Mayor Rowe. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thanks, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Do I have any speakers against? If there are no speakers against, councillors, please cast your vote. It's passed unanimously. We now go to ASO 2924, response to petition PTO 2724, request for solid fencing of Shaftesbury Avenue Drainage Basin, Alexander Heights. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation in the papers tonight from administration? Councillor Smith, do you want to move this? Okay, do I have a seconder for the substantive for this? The motion has now lapsed because we have no seconder for it. We do have an alternative moved by Councillor Rowe. I believe it's seconded by Councillor Herridge. Is that correct? Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to your alternative?
Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity. I'll touch on a number of points. I've tried to provide a reason that goes through the variety of arguments that I believe suggest the fact that we do need to install a solid fence around the drainage sump. The points that I wish to raise with council members tonight, the first is consistency, and that was raised by the initial petition received from the residents and also in the deputation provided to us last week, to create a consistent standard for the drainage sump fencing within the suburb of Alexander Heights. So although administration stated that solid fencing at 3 sumps identified by the petitioner were installed by the developers rather than the city, I don't believe this should be relevant to the decision-making process of council. Long-term residents cannot control when a developer will have an interest in developing parcels of land within their locality. In fact, the majority of residents who engaged with the city on this particular issue moved to Alexander Heights, specifically Shaftesbury Avenue, before the dualling works were undertaken of Hepburn Avenue and before the drainage sump was even constructed. So their residence in the suburb predates the construction of this particular drainage sump. They outlined a number of examples throughout the suburb where there is solid fencing around the entirety of the drainage sumps. This particular case is an inconsistent anomaly, and worse still, it is directly facing onto a busy arterial road that now, as dualled and used regularly by heavy haulage vehicles, creates a significant amount of noise, which was detailed in the petition, detailed in the deputation that was received from council. The second, and I know the argument that we often bring up as a council, is around precedent and whether that should have an influential role in our decision-making process. I know that we should show some regard for hypotheticals, but I don't think that we should allow that to determine our decision. We have received a petition from residents and we are considering this specific individual circumstance, this request for fencing around the entirety of the drainage sump. We haven't received requests in the past from this site or other requests from this suburb, so this should be dealt with on its merits as an individual case. The point that I want to make around noise, Mayor, is that the report speculates that solid fencing will have a negligible impact. However, no further commentary or evidence is provided throughout the report to be able to substantiate this statement. Although I do not have a science background, cannot understand how solid fencing would not block or repel sound particles that are travelling from the road inward bound. So, the comments made in the report, and I know that we do rely upon the report for guidance, so I would just ask administration in future if they're going to make comments throughout the report that can be used to guide our decision making, that there is some reference to the evidence that would support how much regard we should show it when we make our decision. And finally, Mayor, the point that I'd make is the visual amenity. It's been stressed upon by the residents through both their deputation and their petition. I appreciate the fact that maintenance works have been undertaken at this drainage sump, but it is disappointing that it occurred after the petition was received rather than after the multiple CRMs, including one from myself, that was put in. So I'd like us to be a bit more proactive in this space. I hope we will do so now that Council has adopted a higher level of surface rotation for streetscapes, including drainage sumps. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rowe. Councillor Herridge would like to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sure Deputy Rowe has actually covered just about everything. I did take a bit of a visit down and sent everybody a video, so we've all had quite a visual on it. It's quite a large space, so I was in two minds with this one as well, being that the antisocial behaviour that can come from putting in a fence of the same. So I'm supportive because the residents are actually looking for it and hope that something doesn't come from it antisocial-wise. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have any speakers against this alternative? Councillor Smith.
Sorry, Mayor, I have some questions about fencing and I would like administration to have the opportunity to speak to, I guess, part of what the Deputy Mayor brought up in terms of noise. So bringing up the statement that it would have a negligible impact on reducing noise, can administration speak to how they came to that, I guess, determination, please? Thanks.
Mr Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. That comment is based on the length of the fence which has been requested by the petitioner. That's about 85 metres in length, the sump, 85 to 90 metres. Given that Hepburn Avenue dual carriageway is quite long road, that's on the basis of that this small fence is not going to provide an impact and noise reduction for those properties.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Follow-up question about noise walls. Does the material of the fencing impact the quality of potential noise reduction as well? I'm just thinking, I don't think I see colorbond along the freeway, so I'm just wondering if the material of the fences also plays a part. Thanks.
Mr Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. When the assessment is made for the need for any noise barriers, it is based on number of factors, the longitudinal grades and the side grades and where the houses are, where the road levels are, and how much traffic is there, what kind of traffic is passing through the road, how much noise will be generated, and how it will travel to a particular point or number of points. And based on that one, the judgment or the number of solutions can be considered. Could be limestone wall, could be perspex fencing, could be color-bound fencing as one of the options. So there are a number of choices which can be made based on the information which is obtained from noise assessment. So it's quite done in quite detailed manner by the acoustics consultants, and they then suggest the remedial measure or a particular solution for a particular site.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Do you have another question, Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. Did administration think of getting a noise assessment completed, or if not, why in this circumstance? Thanks.
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. No, we didn't consider the need for noise assessment in this instance, given that the request was only for a short length, about 85-90 meters length for the sump. Previously, when Hepburn Avenue was constructed, there was an acoustic study undertaken at that time. From recollection at that time, it didn't warrant the need for any noise walls.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Councillor Smith?
I think I'm coming to my last question. I'm just wondering, has the city provided any noise walls in any other areas, or is that more of a main road situation? Thank you.
Mr Singh?
Thank you, Mayor. From my recollection, all the major road construction which city has undertaken in the last 10, 15 years, maybe longer, we haven't provided any noise walls anywhere. Generally, the first carriageway normally does exist before we build a second carriageway. In most of the cases, under the state planning policy, there's no need to construct noise walls retrospectively. However, at the end of the day, it's a council decision to construct or not to construct, but historically, we haven't provided noise walls.
Any other questions, councillor? Do I have a speaker against the alternative? If there are no speakers against the alternative, councillors, please cast your vote on the alternative recommendation. Could I please see the vote? Could we please have the vote put up? Thank you. And that was passed. That alternative was passed. 11 councillors are supporting and the only one against was Councillor Smith. We now move on to item AS 03924, response to the petition PT01 0724, request to increase verge maintenance between Patrick Court and Our Lady of Mercy Church, Girraween, and or footpath extension. Do I have a mover and seconder for this recommendation? We have a declaration from Deputy Mayor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to this item being AS 030924, I have an impartiality declaration. I disclose that the petitioner is known to me, as I have also attended the same church, being Our Lady of Mercy Catholic Church. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rowe. Do I have a mover and seconder on administration's recommendation? Councillor Herridge? You're happy to move it, Councillor Herridge? And do I have a seconder? Councillor Smith. Councillor Herridge, do you want to speak to this item?
Just to pop the recommendation to the floor and for debate. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, Mayor. I will just turn to it in 1 second. I note that in the petition that we have before us, that's in our report on 246, that the main part of the petition is to increase maintenance of the verge between the footpath and the boundary line. So in terms of the recommendation, that point 3 does say that the city, and as the director has alluded to conversations had with the petition organiser, that they're willing to work with them. So I'm supportive that I believe that these recommendations and the actions forward will actually hopefully address the problem in question for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do I have any speakers against this? You've got a question. Councillor Miles has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Because we had the deputation last week and obviously the follow-up tonight, I would like to just ask administration to clarify, whilst they haven't yet met with the gentleman because he's away, there are two issues. One is weed control, and the other issue that I heard from the gentleman was the fact that on their side of the church side of the path drops down some 100 mil or so. So my questions would be is, one, are we going to manage the weed control more efficiently, and are we going to be able to remedy the drop-off to prevent people that are in their scooters going to and fro from dropping off the edge of the path.
Mr Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We will re-inspect that particular location. If there's a risk of public safety, we will address that one.
Do you have a question, Councillor Smith? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. In one of the deputations, we had reference to weeds being a problem for people in scooters. Is the city aware of any people in scooters that have actually been reported to have a problem from interference from weeds? Mobility scooters, sorry, yes. So are we aware of any injuries or incidents due to weeds? Thank you. Or the misalignment of path?
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm personally not aware of any instances at that particular site.
Ms Coles, would you like to respond to that as well?
Yeah, I'm not personally aware of any in that location.
Any other questions on this item? If there are no questions, Deputy Mayor, you have a question?
Yes, Mayor, the comments last week were also around that upgrade of the footpath is linked to the delivery of the Girraween Hub master plan, which would include trying to establish that section of Patrick Court as more of a open, vibrant precinct. If the city doesn't secure the advocacy amount required to be able to deliver that project, will the city reassess at that point the upgrade of the footpath, noting that it has been used as a reason for us to consider tonight for our decision making?
Mr Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Ordinarily, we will assess under the pathway policy the upgrade of a particular path, but Council can make it, if Council allocates funding in the budget, it can be considered through the budget process.
Okay, do I have any speakers for this item? Do I have a speaker against this item? Councillor Herridge, would you like the right of reply?
I'm actually quite stuck on this one, Mayor. I'm not sure if I feel like it's missing something, but I just don't know what it is. And that's not really helpful, sorry. Can we refer it back and discuss it at a further point?
I've already gone to give you the right of reply, so it has to go to the vote. If it had come, the suggestion come before the right of reply,
okay.
It would have been able to do that. I think I'm stuck with the standing orders with that, the way it goes. Councillors, please cast your vote on this item. I haven't voted. It's me. We're going to have an alternative. And the casting vote for me is no. I struggle that we haven't got an extra amendment in here to advise that it comes back to admin if the Girraween Hub redevelopment of pathway doesn't happen. That's what I'm really struggling with. So does anyone have an alternative? Because we've just said no but not given instruction. Does anyone have an alternative? Councillor Fick?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have an alternative. It would involve deleting the words consider the of in the third note and making the word implement rather than implementation, and then adding a 0.5 to reassess the footpath after 24 months.
Sorry,
I'm sure there's better wording than that.
If I could do a point of order, Mayor. I think it may be a revocation motion. That was previous advice that we received from Governance and Legal regarding previous decisions when it came to councillors accidentally voting one way during decisions, and then we were told or we were instructed by the administration that it was to be considered as a revocation motion. So I'm just wanting some clarity around that, please.
We've made a decision, but we do have to give, we haven't given admin an instruction of what we want them to do. Yes, you may speak to the point of order, Deputy Mayor Rowe.
Just to speak to the point of order, Mayor, there is certainly the capacity for any council member to give notice, to move a motion on notice about this issue for the next council meeting, being the October council meeting. That may be a way to be able to still provide direction to the administration in a reasonable timeframe.
Okay, so would you like to foreshadow a motion on notice, Councillor Figg?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so therefore we will foreshadow a motion on notice to further discuss what council wants to be done in the future. And so we move on. That motion is lost and we move on with a plan to deal with it at the next council meeting. We now go to ASO 4924, Tender 24034, the renewal of play equipment, softball and installation of shade sail structures. There are confidential attachments on this item, and so if any discussion is on the confidential attachments, we will have to go behind closed doors. Do I have a mover and seconder? Move Deputy Mayor Rowe. Seconded, Councillor Wright. Councillor Wright, sorry, Councillor Moore. Deputy Mayor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
Just briefly, Mayor, and you can rule the comment out of order if you want. I just wanted to let the members of the public know that they're welcome to leave at any point. You don't have to stay for the full duration of the meeting if you were here for a planning item. So I just didn't want them being here for 3 hours if they could avoid it. I have nothing to add other than that the recommendation speaks for itself, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. Just in regards to this item, noting the geographical spread, again, coming back to those principles around geographical spread is always welcome. And certainly some of the projects in there, I know the residents around Galuma Park will be very welcome to see the park getting an uplift, considering the park hasn't had an upgrade for some time. So I do note that that certainly is one of the projects that I've been pushing for, and look forward to working with the Director of Assets to work on the rest of the park, but also highlighting some of the areas around Banksia Grove as well. I'm sure will be a welcome addition for those suburbs, which I know the Central East Ward councillors are working very hard on improving those appearance of those parks, as well as the areas in the north, which I know Councillor Figg and Councillor Coetzee are very passionate about as well. So I commend the recommendation to Council and look forward to seeing all these improvements to these parks. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, do I have any speakers against this? If there are no speakers against this, councillors, please cast your vote. And that is passed unanimously. We now go to ASO 5924, Tender 24043, provision of Jindalee, Alkimos and Eglinton streetscape and park maintenance. Once again, we have confidential attachments. If we need to discuss any of the confidential attachments, we will need to go behind closed doors. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Moved Councillor Figg, seconded Councillor Herridge. Councillor Figg, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor. It's good to see this coming to Council.
Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Do I have any speakers against? If there are no speakers against, councillors, please cast your vote. Missing one. It's not me. And it's passed unanimously. We now go to Community in Place, CPO 1924, the CSRFF Forward Planning Grant 2025-26 application for the Sports Amenities Building upgrade at Abbeyville Park, Mindari. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this? Moved Councillor Bedworth, seconded Councillor Miles. Councillor Bedworth, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just to say that I'm pleased to see this come before Council. It's a fantastic oval in Mindari there that is utilised by a lot of different sporting groups as well as the local school. It will be nice to see that the amenity is going to be expanded further still should this application be successful. And I'm always in favour of the city seeking external funding for things like this. So I encourage my council colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedworth. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item? Are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And it's passed unanimously. We now go to CPO 2924, Bushfire Advisory Committee Terms of Reference Review. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Moved Councillor Wright, seconded Councillor Figg. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Other than to add to thank Director Davies and Ms Thrush in making those relevant changes to the terms of reference, which certainly brings it in line with our governance framework, but also to change the intention to align with the Act with those added provisions in. And I look forward to having all these groups come back to for review for the Tranche 2 reforms. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Figg, would you like to speak to this item?
Only to say, Mayor, that we're approaching 5 years since the Yanchep bushfires and obviously the Marrickginup bushfires more recently. And it's just good to know that we are making sure that we are reviewing these systems and ensuring that we have good oversight of our bushfire fighting capabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And it's passed unanimously. We now go to item CPO 3924, Amendment to the City of Wanneroo Cats Local Law. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Moved Deputy Mayor Rowe, seconded Councillor Bedworth. Deputy Mayor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Not that I don't like to see this report, but I do hope it is the last time it is brought before us. It's a regular, reoccurring, wonderful report, so I commend it for the last time.
Councillor Bedworth, would you like to speak to this item?
Other than to say thank you to Deputy Mayor Rowe for stealing my thunder on that part. And I will be feline good to see the back of this, if we can support it. Thank you.
And I'm going to ask, do we have any speakers against this report? Thank goodness. Councillors, please cast your vote. And guess what? It is passed unanimously. Councillors, we go to CPO 4924, the Australia Day Awards Working Group and Terms of Reference. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Moved Councillor Herridge, seconded Councillor Bedworth. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. To put my nomination forward for one position, please.
Oh, we are. Okay. Councillor Bedworth.
Again, thank you for stealing my thunder there, Councillor Herridge. Yeah, just to say that I think this is a good initiative that the city's brought forward, and I'm glad to see it. A very worthy terms of reference for worthy members of our community. So I recommend we all support it. Thank you.
A moment, we will get organised here. So, Councillor Herridge would like to go on it. Councillor Bedworth? Who else would like to go on the Australia Day Awards? Councillor Moore? Anyone else? We've got a fourth spot here. Oh, Councillor Coetzee. Councillor Coetzee. So Councillor Coetzee as well? So I have Councillor Herridge, Councillor Bedworth, Councillor Moore and Councillor Huntley. Is that correctly? Councillor Moore?
Just a quick question. We're meeting once a year, but do you know what the date of that might be?
No, but it'll be in plenty of time so that we can work it out, because remember we go into recess from the 5th of December.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
So we have Councillor Herridge, Councillor Bedworth, Councillor Moore and Councillor Huntley. Do we have anyone else who wants to contest the position? Okay, so the recommendation is as written. 1, 2 and 3 appoints the Mayor and 4 council members to the Australia Day Awards Working Group, being A, Councillor Herridge, B, Councillor Bedworth, C, Councillor Moore and D, Councillor Huntley. Councillors, Councillor Herridge, you moved it. Did you get to speak to it? Do you want to speak to it?
I think Councillor Bedworth did a wonderful job.
I will. Anyone against this? If there's no one against it, councillors, please cast your vote. I didn't forget. I did the first time. And that's passed unanimously, councillors. We now go to Corporate Strategy and Performance, Transactional Finance, CSO 1924, warrant of payments for the period to the 31st of July 2024. Do I have a mover and seconder for the warrant of payments? Councillor Miles, seconder Deputy Mayor Rowe. Councillor Miles, do you want to speak to this item? Deputy Mayor Rowe, do you want to speak to this item? Are there any speakers against the warrant of payments? If there are no speakers against the warrant of payments, councillors, please cast your vote. And that was passed unanimously. We now go to item CSO 2924, the financial activity statement for the period ended the 31st of July 2024. Do I have a mover and seconder for the financial activity statement? Moved Councillor Herridge, second Councillor Miles. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item? Are there any speakers against the financial activities statement as printed in our agenda? If there are no speakers against, councillors, please cast your vote. And we're missing one. And that is passed unanimously. We now go to CEO 1924, extension of review dates of council policies. Do I have a mover and seconder for the substantive? Yeah, we move and the substantive and then the amendments brought to the floor. I have Councillor Smith and Councillor Rowe are moving and seconding the substantive. And is there anyone that wants to bring up something? Councillor Miles, would you like to suggest something?
Yes, thank you. I do have an amendment. Thank you, Mayor. I move in my name and I have a seconder in Councillor Wright. It has been placed on everybody's desk for tonight, and it is just to amend the recommendation to add in a 4.5 and then the underlined sections. I won't read them out because I think people can read them for themselves, councillors can read them for themselves. It is just to change a process that we do internally, that we set up a committee, obviously in accordance with Section 5.8 of the Local Government Act. This will set up a committee to deal with all of our policies that we currently have and any future policies, but it will not do brand new policies. That still has to go through the normal forum process and come to council to be approved before it can then obviously be reviewed when the time comes. The whole idea of doing this, councillors, is to streamline some of our processes. As we know, sometimes our forums can get quite blocked up with policy changes or policy amendments, and also when they come to the floor of the chamber as well. The idea of setting up a committee is to actually deal with the policy reviews on an annual basis, or in accordance to what that committee needs to do if there's something a bit more complex, before it then gets referred back to council for ratification. Councillors, it's no different to the way that we deal with the Audit and Risk Committee, where it actually deals with items at that committee, and then any recommendations from Audit and Risk come to council for ratification. That's exactly the same process in this case. It is to assist our administration to be able to get the review of policies, council policies, in a timely manner, and not requiring for extension of reviews every few months. And that's the idea of the amendment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. Trying not to reiterate what Councillor Miles has added to the conversation, but I do understand that we're needing a change in our framework at the City of Wanneroo, and I know, as Councillor Miles alluded to before, our forum schedules do get quite clogged up, and especially with policy changes, those conversations can go for hours depending on what the policy is. So I think to be able to have that in a separate committee with half of the council to be able to workshop that, and then obviously bring it back to council, because I understand the committee doesn't have delegated authority due to one of our roles as council being policy, and obviously that's a function we cannot delegate and make decisions on behalf of council. Just to go through some of the other points on there. Obviously, if councillors want to raise notices of motion or propose any new policies, as I know the committee only has half of council, it still gives councillors that opportunity to workshop with other councillors at the forum, or bring that to council and have an initial determination. So just keeping the committee simple to deal with existing local planning policies and council policies, just to make sure that those review dates are tidy up and we're not having to extend or get those surprise reports at a council meeting on revoking policies that may still be needed. And also, in regards to the schedule, meeting on an annual basis was the feedback we received from the administration in terms of as a good starting point. And then obviously if there's any additional meetings needed, that would be obviously at the committee's discretion or the chairperson's discretion for that. So I think it is definitely a good committee to have, and I know not many other local councils at the moment have a policy committee, or they've tied it up with a policy and governance committee. So I think it's definitely a really good addition for us as we move into a new phase at the city and at a council level. So definitely recommend this to councillors to support and get behind, and make sure that we can keep up to date with our policies so we can improve them quite quickly and streamline the process. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Seif, did you have a question? Would you like to ask your question or a declaration?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just because I'm not physically there, I don't have that printout in front of me, and I can't see what's on the screen behind you. So if someone could just read it out before we vote, if that's possible.
Not a problem. So the recommendations are all the same, but we've added point 4, by absolute majority establishes the Policy Review Committee in accordance with section 5.8 of the Local Government Act 1995 to assist council in fulfilling its responsibility under section 2.7 in brackets 2 in brackets B of the Local Government Act 1995 in determining the policies of the council. And 5, request the CEO to present the terms of reference for adoption no later than November 2024 Ordinary Council meeting with the following guiding principles. A, Purpose: to assist the council in fulfilling its responsibility under section 2.72B of the Local Government Act 1995 in determining the policies of the council. The purpose of the committee will be limited to review and change any of existing council and local planning policies. This committee is not to deal with any new council policies or local planning policy proposals by administration or council members unless requested by council. B, membership comprising of 7 council members with all remaining council members appointed as deputies. C, delegated authority none. Section 2.72B is the role of a council. D, meetings. The committee shall meet on an annual basis with additional meetings scheduled as required with notice. Are you happy with that, Councillor Seif, with hearing that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have one question.
Yes, Councillor
So,
Seif.
any policy? Thank you. So it's the committee shall meet once a year, but that doesn't preclude anyone who's a councillor that's not on the committee from bringing forward an issue with policy outside of that once a year meeting.
Councillor Seif, it's to review policies. It's not for any new policies. But
Okay. Yes.
Does that answer your question? I'm not sure that it does. Does that answer your question?
That wasn't really my question. Should a councillor have a concern and wish to review an existing policy outside of that annual meeting, would that still be possible?
I believe so, yes. The CEO's just confirmed that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, do I have any speakers against the amendment as brought? Okay, councillors, could you please cast your vote on the amendment? So that's passed unanimously, and I know that this is a bit silly, but I'm going to ask to pass the substantive as amended, even though we've virtually done that with the recommendation, but I'm going to ask that we do that for the process. So, councillors, could you please cast your vote on the substantive as amended? It's a technicality. I know it's no different, but yes, you are.
Mayor, just while we're doing the count, can we just ask administration to maybe, whenever we get these green slips, there's a couple tonight, that anybody that are online, they get emailed to them prior to, please?
Yes, I think that should have happened anyway. Oh, they're on the hub, if the councillors have access to the hub at where they are. I don't know if... I think it would be better to email them, Mr CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll review that process, Councillor Miles, just to make sure that all members, whether they're in the chamber or are absent, are aware that those amendments have come in.
We now go to item 9, motions on notice, MNO 10924 from Councillor Coetzee. Do you have a seconder for your motion on notice?
I do, Councillor Herridge.
Councillor Coetzee, would you like to speak to your motion on notice?
Yes, please. The residents of the North would appreciate the addition of 3 new train stations. However, there have been some challenges with the changes to the bus routes 490 and 491 in Two Rocks, Yanchep and Alkimos. These buses used to transport students to and from school and were always full. However, with the new routes, the buses are running empty. As a result of the train station opens, students from Two Rocks and Yanchep now have to take a bus to Yanchep train station, then transfer to a train to Eglinton or Alkimos train station, followed by another bus to reach their schools, such as the North Shore or St James. This extended journey has caused inconvenience and safety concerns as there is a lack of security at the train stations currently. The changes to these routes have not only made the commute longer, but have also created the need for alternative transport arrangements. I do believe that reinstating the old 490 and 491 bus routes could help solve these problems. I therefore am submitting a formal request to the Chief Executive Officer to write to the Perth Transport Authority, urging a reassessment of the bus routes to Yanchep, Eglinton and Alkimos train stations with a specific focus on the bus services for schools in the northern suburbs of the city. I have, over the weekend, however, had contact with Councillor Herridge, and she have a very similar problem in her area, and I would like to know if I can change or add on to the recommendation, just Lansdale and Darsh, and then I'll give over to Councillor Herridge.
Well, it's your motion on notice if you want to add those two suburbs, and if the seconder is happy with that, we'll add those two suburbs as well.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Pull that up so we can see it. Excuse me, Doug, quickly pull that recommendation up.
We're just waiting until it's pulled up for the councillors to see, and hopefully the councillors online to see as well. If not, I'll read it out for them as well. We might need to wordsmith this.
It's the second part as well.
I think we're changing item 2, not item 1.
No, they both need to change.
Maybe if I add something as a seconder, Mayor, it might help bring through the amendment.
Can we do an item 3 that relates to Lansdale and Darsh bus services as well? And because Lansdale and Darsh don't relate to the Yanchep train lines?
Correct, yes.
So
mine's relating to Balladura.
Balladura. So have you got an idea of a wordsmith of how you want to do put item 3 in?
I did previously suggest maybe an item 3 requesting the CEO to also include the bus services of Lansdale and Darch, in particular the 450 deviation route to Ashdale College.
Can we run that wording to
The back there?
I did try.
So we're adding a point 3, and we're not going to have anything to do with Lansdale and Darsh in point 1 or point 2. Point 3 will be Lansdale and Darsh. Yes, Councillor Bedworth.
Thank you. Are you wanting to get the PTA to, through you, Mayor, if I may, sorry, to have this direct service throughout the day, or is it a school special service you're looking at? Because there's suburbs all over that are affected in the same manner. I know we do in Mindarie that kids who go to Kinross have got to go to Clarkson to Currumbine to then walk to Kinross. So it's maybe a general request for a consideration of, and up to you naturally.
Yes, sometimes it's a bit frustrating when things like that happen. when they took out the bus line, when they dualled Marmion Avenue or put Marmion Avenue through, they put the bus down Marmion Avenue and cancelled the bus down Wanneroo Road, which affected everyone getting to work in Wangara and all the way down Wanneroo Road, and the kids getting to school down Wanneroo Road that came to down there. And there are always consequences every time you move a bus route. Are you happy with point 3?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As long as the mover is.
Okay, I'm going to read it out from the beginning.
Sorry, Mayor.
Yep.
Does Councillor Bedworth just want to add his as well?
Through you, Mayor, if I may. I suppose it's up to you, it's your motion. But if it's just around school special services.
It is around school special services.
I don't think that alludes to that. I think PTL read that as all of them.
Can we put in school bus services in there?
Can we have a look at the whole recommendation from 1 to 3 in one page, please? Well, at the moment it's 1 to 3, okay? So the recommendation is that Council notes that city residents have been adversely impacted by the changes to the bus routes in Two Rocks, Yanchep, Eglinton, Alkimos since the commencement of train services to Yanchep, and 2, requests the Chief Executive Officer to write to the Perth Transport Authority requesting a reassessment of bus routes to the Yanchep, Eglinton and Alkimos stations, particularly the bus services provided to schools in the northern suburbs of the city. And 3, requests the Chief Executive Officer to additionally include the bus services of Lansdale and Darsh, particularly the 450 deviation to Ashdale College. And
I think it captures both because it talks about the bus routes and it just says a particular emphasis on the schools.
Mr. CEO, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Happy for the councillors to also make comment, but my reading of that second part is that it talks about all of the bus services in the area, but then particularly emphasises the school routes. So the councillors are happy with that.
Can we add number 4 for Councillor Bedworth's area?
I think the CEO was saying that that was incorporated in item 2 with the bus services provided to school in the northern suburbs of the city. Okay, councillors, you're happy with it as amended, and Councillor Herridge, did you get to speak to that? Would you like to speak to it?
Very quickly, thank you, Mayor. Just to thank Councillor Coetzee for actually bringing this to our attention. I have been watching a couple of Facebook posts myself with Lansdale and Darch, and a few people actually got in contact with me at the same time, so it was perfect timing. I don't know if this has happened in the north, but recently, within the last 4 years, the PTA actually did do this to the same route. It got petitioned quite heavily, and for some reason they've forgotten that and it's gone back. So in bringing on Balladura, they've completely forgotten what's happened 2 to 4 years ago and re-changed it completely. If it's the same as what's happening in the north, they're deviating one route morning and afternoon, and that's allowing for no movement for the kids, where our bus services are predominantly to service the people that need them. One service in the morning and afternoon is not enough. I know my kids in our area have an early close on a Wednesday, so for that, they have to wait and get subsequent. So some of the kids going from Darch to Lansdale to get home are actually getting 2 buses, which just seems absolutely ridiculous. So this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Are there any speakers against? If there are no speakers against, councillors, please cast your vote on this motion on notice. And that is passed unanimously. Item 10, urgent business, we have none. Item 11, confidential, we have none. Item 12, date of the next meeting. The next council members briefing session is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Tuesday the 1st of October to be held at Council Chambers, Civic Centre, 23 Dundebar Road, Wanneroo. And closure, I now declare this meeting closed at 7:45 p.m. Thank you.